it comes to making a quilt label for your quilt, the question is never if you should make it, but always either when or how you should make it. I add labels to my quilts just for my own documentation to think about when I finish the quilt, um, any special techniques that were used to make the quilt, like the pattern or something like that. And I've seen lots of different ways that you can make it. I've seen people embroider the backing fabric, um, and embroider labels that they stitch onto the quilt. I use a pretty simple method. I handwrite them and use pieces of fabric, but of course it depends on what kind of backing. This one I pieced the backing, and since there were open spaces in the quilting, there was space in the piece back that I could put a label. So I put right here the name of the quilt and the pattern, and then this is a gift for my nephew, so I put that it's a gift for him from me. Okay, but when I do the quilt that I'm doing today, which is the curved log cabin quilt, there's no place on the back to put a label, so I have to add one. And this is a really simple technique, simple method, so I'll go through it. Basically, all I need is some fabric. I'm going to use the backing fabric, and I have this archival pen. It's Pigma Micron 01. I got it from Joann's. It's a black pen, but you can buy these in sets with all different colors. I'm also going to use scissors, and I take this opportunity on the quilt labels to practice some of the fancy stitches on my machine. So let's go to the machine and see how that happens. So I'm at the sewing machine area right now, and I took a little piece of my backing fabric, this here, and I cut a rectangle out. And the cool thing about this is that there aren't really any rules, and even though I'm using this fabric, if I wrote right here, you wouldn't be able to see the writing. So I'm actually going to use the wrong side of this fabric as the front, so that's the part that I'll be writing on. So you'll still be able to see what I'm writing, but I love that I can actually use the backing fabric. Now that I'm at the machine, I'm going to take advantage of some of those decorative stitches, and I want to bring the camera around and show you what I'm going to choose, and then we'll stitch it. Here are the decorative stitches that my machine has. If your machine doesn't have these, you could just go with a simple zigzag, and I think that would be fine. But I'm actually going to go, since I'm calling this quilt the Going Places quilt, there are lots of different options because I kind of want an arrow feel. So like number 41 would be really nice. Or see what else, maybe 48. That one would be kind of cool. Also, let me see, there's another one that I like. 56 would be a nice arrow, but I think that I'm going to try 83. Okay, so I'm going to set up my machine here. Let's see, this is for the 10s. 8, and then 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to make it as big as it can get, hopefully. So I'm just going to make both of those big. I don't know what's going to happen with that. I've already changed out my my foot. I was doing some free motion quilting, so I put my open toe foot on. So hopefully we'll get some good video of this stitch. I'm using a dark gray thread, the same color that I use for my quilting. But of course you could use any color that you have on hand. One thing about it is, since these are folded under, I'm going to stitch on top, and it's going to seal those the edges. So that instead of being raw edges, they'll actually have a little a fold there. So I'm going to do the stitch. Actually, I'll start it on camera so you can see what it looks like. I'm trying this one-handed, so I'm going to see what happens. Let me lower my pressure foot. And then we're going to try out this stitch. Let's see. Everything. Here we go. It's making it. You can see that the needle's moving back and forth. So I'll do a little bit of it, then I'll show you what it looks like. And I'm actually going to stitch all the way around the perimeter. Here's the panel or my label with the arrows across. You can see that it's been decoratively stitched. I like the way it's turned out. So now it's time to go ahead and figure out how I'm going to label this thing. And I'm using let me turn it this way, this Pigma Micron pen. It's actually, I guess 01 is the length I have, or the line. I have no idea. It says 0.25 milliliters or millimeters. And you can see that it's a pretty fine line. So I'm going to use this to label the quilt. I'm going to put the title, probably the pattern, the date it was finished, all that kind of stuff, and probably a special message to my nephew who it's for. So let me do that, and then I'll show you the next step. I've made the label. I went ahead and wrote my special message for my nephew. The name of this quilt is the Going Places Quilt because the curved log cabin design, I made that path with it. And now I'm going to stitch it. Oh, but actually before I do that, I used my 0.25 millimeter marker and I went over it twice so that it would be good and dark. If you just do it once, it'll fade a little bit the first time you wash it. And I think it's going to fade a little bit anyway, but this just gives it kind of a better chance. And then I also heat set it with an iron. So I put the iron on our normal cotton setting and just placed it over these little sections. I would be careful if you're not using cotton thread in your border design, but this is cotton thread, so it was fine. So now what I'm going to do is stitch it down. I'm going to stitch it down by hand. I have my needle and a double length of thread that I have knotted at one end. Okay, so there's the little knot. I don't know if you can see that. Little tiny knot. Yep. And so I'm going to start stitching this down. I'm using a blind stitch. I'll start it so you can see how I started and do the blind stitch, but then I'm gonna I'll finish it away from the camera. So I'm gonna actually start in the corner, but to get there I'm going to go through the layers of the quilt a bit away. So I put my needle in over here and I'm gonna bring it up through the label, and I kind of have to hold this, okay, and then pulling it through, and I go ahead and pull that knot through, and then it's going to hold here. I'll cut this little tail. There's a little tail right there. I'm going to cut it off. Now to do the blind stitch, I'm actually doing this standing so we can see it on the camera. I want to make sure that you can see it on the camera. All right, and to make this blind stitch, I'm actually using that fold that I created when I pressed this before I stitched the border decoration on. All right, so what I'm going to do, going through the back, I'm going to go in between the fabric and the batting, or the backing and the batting, and then I went between the layers of the label. All right, and I'm going to pull it through, pulling it tight. So I took my first stitch here, I had to take a phone call. All right, and so now I'm back, and I'm going to hold this kind of close. All right, and so I pull the first stitch through, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go through the backing fabric, and then go through. So I'm basically going in the fold so that it's so that you can't actually see the stitch. Uh-oh. I'm going to just pull it through. And the same thing all the way around. So the next one, backing fabric in that fold. Try to get it in that fold. I'm trying to put this on camera. And then push it through again. And I'm left-handed, so my stitches go from left to right. If you're right-handed, you'll be coming the other way. But so I guess the arrows are going in the right way for me. All right, let's do one more. And then I'm going to try to finish the rest of this off camera. Okay. So this way, let me see if I can get closer. You can't actually see the stitches, but it's going to hold this label on pretty sturdy. I'll finish this off camera, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Here is the finished label on the quilt. It's really cute. I like the way that it turned out. And I have I washed this quilt, and so now the quilt has its nice little crinkle. And this is, of course, since I hand sewed it, it's not perfect, and it didn't shrink like along with the rest of the quilt, but it's still really secure. It's going to hold its it's going to stay on this quilt very well. And you can see that even though I did 2 layers with the pin, it's already faded a little bit, but I think that's probably all that it's going to fade. It's I really like the way that this quilt turned out. Everything from the blocks to the final layout, everything is just really nice. And I'm going to end the video here, but I'll take pictures. So stay tuned so you can see the pictures of the quilt, and then I'll fold it up into the quillo so you can see that now that it's been washed. Thanks so much for watching. Please thumbs up this video and share it with your friends, and I will see you next time. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below. Bye!